And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. We are live. Welcome to Benchley Night. But as you know, right now for the next few weeks, it's going to be Robert McCloskey night. We are reading from the great Homer Price, one of my favorite books of childhood that holds up beautifully in my adulthood. So I will say the sequel, which was called Centerburg Tales, is not nearly as good. It's trying too hard. But this book, Homer Price itself, is just about in my opinion, perfect, gentle, mildly satirical, very loving look at small town America in, I guess it's the late 40s. Looking at what the cars look like and the gas station logos, which that's my wheelhouse, ladies and gentlemen. That's my wheelhouse. But anyway, it's lovely to be here. My brother's here. Hi, Will. Will and I are going to have coffee this week. I hear from Will only occasionally when he's usually looking for Amtrak schedules to various places around the country where friends of his have to head, and I certainly am more reliable than the Amtrak website. So any of you out there, if you need any Amtrak advice, send me an email. I really, I do pride myself on the accuracy of my Amtrak advice. Did the guy make it to Rochester? Well, anyway, let's see. Oh, today was a great day. Today was a great day, ladies and gentlemen, because like almost all of us, I assume, I have all these little trays and boxes of the just slowly, just miscellany gets put in there. And I have a wonderful woman who comes and cleans the house every month, and that's what she does with stuff that she's not quite sure what to do with. It's very logical. But over the last few years, there are now many trays and boxes and containers of miscellany. Today, I sat down and I did my favorite, the thing I figured out 10 years ago, ladies and gentlemen. If you're having to sort a whole bunch of stuff, don't try to put it in its final destination immediately. Put like with like. I taught my brother this. So all electronics, that can be headphone, cords and cords to digital cameras that are 20 years out of date. Don't try to deal with it. Just put them all together. And then one day you can sit down and do I'm going through the electronics pile. Here's the pile of dead batteries and dead fluorescent lights that are going to go to the recycling center. There's the vaguely cat-related pile. There are stickers. It's great. Anyway, we got that done today, ladies and gentlemen. It was great. And I was reminded today of my good friend, the attorney Joe Ray Skira, up there in, not Homer, he's in Soldotna or Kenai, in Kenai, Alaska. And Joe Ray Skira is beloved to all on the Roots on the Rails family, because he always comes down from Alaska with 40 pounds of salmon. And we have a little song about it. But anyway, Joe Ray, I came across a note from Joe Ray, and I just happened about 10 days ago to order some salmon from Alaska from one of Joe Ray's clients. Joe Ray's a lawyer up there. And I started remembering tonight that when we did the Wainwright family vacation, which was Loudon Wainwright III, Sloan Wainwright, his sister, I think Ceci Roach, his ex-wife, Lucy Wainwright Roach, uh, and Rufus Wainwright. And Rufus is, kind of a big deal. And our group was in Homer, Alaska, and we were staying at the Best Western. What is it called? Oh, Best Western. Forget the name of it. And the bar there is called the Otter Room. We were playing in we had the Wainwright family set up in the Otter Room, and it was a private show. We didn't advertise it, but if anyone happened into the Otter Room, they got the Wainwright family. And Joe Ray was running sound for us that night. And Joe Ray is a distinctive looking guy. He's a big guy, and he has a commanding presence. And word got out to a few people that Rufus Wainwright was playing at the Otter Room at the Best Western in Homer, Alaska. And these two women came in, and they looked like, not to be too stereotypical, but they looked like a lesbian couple. And they were sitting there very excited to see Rufus Wainwright. And I got chatting with them as the tour group leader. And they were like, "Is that attorney Joseph Skira running the sound for you?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And they said, we don't like him at all. Because I guess they're involved with the Women's Center. It is a safe space for women who are being abused by their husbands or partners. And attorney Joseph Skira is kind of known, I guess, in Kenai for defending some of those who might be a little bit abusive or something. But everyone deserves a lawyer. But anyway, I said, yes, that was attorney Joseph Skira. And they looked a little bit angry. And I said, but tonight we are all celebrating music and community together. We all love this music. And they agreed with that. We had a lovely time. And I was just thinking about how much fun it was on those trips when you have very, very diverse people who politically we would not get along at all. We got along beautifully because we love the music, and it's how I feel about my art. I've got some great painter friends who I completely disagree with politically. And I feel fortunate, actually, to have that leavening in my life. Anyway, that's enough blathering. I have blathered probably for, oh my gosh, like 6.5 minutes. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry about that. We have a few people to thank tonight because I started thinking about pets and how much we love our pets and how hard it is to let go of pets because, they're kind of proxies for our lives. And you say, how many cat lives do you have before you shuffle off? Anyway, we love our cats, we love our dogs, we love our tortoises, we love our lemurs. I don't know anybody who loves a lemur, but I'm sure there are people. But tonight's Liberal Snowplowing Do-Gooder beneficiary was Windham County Humane Society, who you may remember was the beneficiary of the largesse of my late cat, Private Silas Goodrich. And I'm pleased to say we raised about $280 for the Windham County Humane Society. And we have a few people to thank. So let us start. Let us start with our friend Meg Miser, who loves her cat Tess. And Tess has been having some medical issues of late. Here's to Meg. Thank you, Meg. My artist friend, Catherine Fisher. Thank you, Catherine. In Saxon's River. She's a horse lover, but she loves all animals. Wonderful human being. Ms. Martha Rowley. over in Turkey, where she is investigating getting a boat for the next Roots on the Waves trip. Ms. Sarah, and she is far away from her beloved dog. Hudson is probably like, where's mom? Where's mom? Ms. Sarah Ovenden. Also on the high seas somewhere, I get very confused, but she's out there. She just was in Pompeii, I think. She just was in Pompeii. Ms. Terry Hudson, right here in Bellows Falls, Vermont, fresh out of Facebook jail. Mr. Rick Gavotsky, out in Omaha, Nebraska, where the corn grows high. It's just started, but it will be. Mr. John T. Wilhelm, up there in St. Albans, Vermont. He paid a visit to Bellows Falls this last week. He paid a visit to Bellows Falls, and I was going to go meet him, but then my bitchin' e-trike broke, and I was stranded at the house, and I got a ride over to the studio and got my car and drove and met him on the platform and gave him a hail and hearty farewell. Mr. Jim Frisk. An acquaintance from around here, a wonderful person who politically I agree with 110%, Miss Michelle Dufour. And out there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where his beloved Pittsburgh Pilates, the Pittsburgh Pilates, they lost. They got scalped, ladies and gentlemen, by the Atlanta Braves yesterday. And let's see, I forget who they're going to get mauled by. I guess it's the Tigers. They're going to get mauled by the Tigers next week. My very, 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 very tall cousin who loves his tiny, 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 tiny little dog, Ginger, and his wonderful wife, Elise. My tall cousin, Mr. Nat Hunter. Thank you all so much. And what blathering you have put up with, ladies and gentlemen. What blathering indeed. Tonight's reading is The Case of the Cosmic Comic. One Saturday afternoon, Homer and Freddie's little brother Louis were listening to the State College football game on the radio. After the game, Homer said, "I'm feeling sort of hungry. Come on, Freddie. Come on, Louis. Let's go down into the kitchen and get something to eat." They went downstairs, and Homer poured out 3 glasses of milk, and Homer's mother brought out the cookie jar. "Now, don't eat too many cookies," she cautioned, "because it's almost dinner time." "No, ma'am, we won't," said Freddie. Then he said to Homer, "Has tonight's newspaper come yet?" "I think so," said Homer. "Yeah, there it is, on top of the refrigerator." "Oh, boy," said Freddie as he opened it to the comic page. "Let's see what happened to the Super Duper." So Freddie and little brother Louis and Homer gathered around the paper to see how the Super Duper was going to get out of the big steel box that was filled with dynamite, where the villain had put him and dropped him into the middle of the ocean from an airship. There, in the first picture, the Super Duper was saying, "Ha ha, that villain thinks he can get rid of me, but he's mistaken." Then, in the next picture, the dynamite exploded and it blew the steel box to bits. But that didn't hurt the Super Duper, however, because the Super Duper is so tough, tougher than steel, that nothing can hurt him. "Just look at those muscles and that chest the Super Duper's got," said Freddie, before going on to the next picture. In the next picture, the Super Duper bounded up from the bottom of the ocean and went whizzing through the air. He caught the airship by the tail and he broke it off with a loud crack. In the last picture, the villain was trying to escape in an airplane, and was machine gunning the Super Duper, but the bullets were just bouncing off his chest because he was so tough. Then it said, continued on Monday. Boy, said Freddie, the Super Duper can do anything. Yeah, but it's only a story, said Homer. And the story is always the same. The Super Duper always hits things and breaks them up, and the villain always tries to bomb him or shoot him with a cannon or a gun or an electric ray. Then he always rescues the pretty girl, and he gets the villain at the end. Well, it isn't just a story, said Freddie, because Super Duper is in the movies, too. They really take movies of him lifting battleships with one hand and even flying through space. Ah, said Homer. I read a book once that said they do that sort of thing with wires and mirrors. It's just trick photography. That's all it is. Then little brother Louis, who'd been eating cookies all this time, said, read it to me. So Freddie had to read it all over again out loud and explain the story to little Louis. Freddie, called Homer's mother, your mother just phoned and wants you to bring little Louis, right home. Okay, come on, Louis, finish your milk. Goodbye, Homer. Thank you for the cookies. The next time Freddie came over to visit Homer, he brought along some of the Super Duper comic magazines. Say, Homer, I thought you might like to look at these, said Freddie, who I think might be a member of the MAGA movement today if he's still with us. Say, Homer, I thought you might to look at these, said Freddie. Gosh, Freddie, you certainly have a lot of these comic magazines, said Homer. Oh, they don't cost much, said Freddie. Only 10 cents a piece. Here, read this one, Homer. It's the most exciting. Homer took the comic magazines and started to read while Freddie looked over his shoulder. At the beginning of the story, the Super Duper was dressed in ordinary clothes just like any other man. Then, after the villain appeared on the second page, the Super Duper slipped behind a tree and he changed into red tights and a long blue cape. Why does he always change his clothes like that? Asked Homer. That is because he is so modest, said Freddie in a knowing way. Homer started reading again. After the Super Duper had changed his clothes, he started flying through space and smashing things. He picked up automobiles and tossed them over cliffs, and even carried a train across a river after the villain had blown up the bridge. Then, finally, he saved the pretty girl from a horrible death, caught the villain, who turned out to be a very notorious criminal. Gosh, Freddie, these Super Duper stories are all the same, said Homer. No, they're not, said Freddie. Sometimes the Super Duper smashes airships, and sometimes he smashes ocean liners. Then other times he just breaks up mountains. Oh, here's a picture, ladies and gentlemen. Here's Homer and Freddie and little Louis reading the comics and reading the newspaper. Little Louis and Freddie are really involved. Homer looks kind of blasé. Oh, the illustrations are so good in this. They're so good in this. But he always rescues the pretty girl and catches the villain on the last page, said Homer. Well, of course, said Freddie. That's to show that crime does not pay. Oh, shucks, said Homer. Let's go pitch horseshoes. Okay, said Freddie. Freddie won 2 games out of 3, and then he said, well, guess it's almost supper time. See you tomorrow, Homer. Yep. Goodbye, Freddie, said Homer. and Freddie gathered up his comic magazines and went up the road home. After supper, when Homer was doing his homework, the phone rang. "Hello," said Homer. "Hello, is that you, Homer? This is Freddie. Say, did you see in the paper tonight? There's going to be a super duper movie over at the Centerburg Theater next Saturday afternoon." Before Homer could say, "No, I didn't," Freddie shouted, "And guess what? The super duper in person is going to be there. And Homer," Freddie went on, "Mother has a box from the mail order house over at the Centerburg Railroad Station. So Dad says that little Louis and I can take the horse and wagon and we can drive to Centerburg on Saturday. We can get the box and then we can go see the super duper. I thought you might want to come along." "Sure thing," said Homer. "Okay, we'll stop by for you," said Freddie. "Goodbye, Homer." On Saturday, Freddie and little Louis, they drove up to Homer's house with old Lucy hitched to the wagon just as Homer was finishing his lunch. "I thought we'd better get an early start," said Freddie, "because it takes old Lucy about an hour to get to Centerburg." "I'll be ready in just a second," said Homer. Then, after Homer had climbed in, Freddie said, "Giddy up," to old Lucy, and they started off to see the super duper in person. When they arrived in Centerburg, the first thing they did was go to the station and load the box from the mail order house into the back of the wagon. "Gosh, that's heavy," said Homer as they lifted it up. "Yeah," said Freddie, "but I bet you the super duper could lift it with his little finger." "Maybe so," said Homer. "Let's stop over at Uncle Ulysses' lunchroom and get some donuts to eat at the movie." Foreshadowing, ladies and gentlemen, foreshadowing right there. Donuts. Freddie and little Louis both thought that that was a good idea, so they drove old Lucy around to the lunchroom to get some donuts. Then Freddie and little Louis and Homer walked across the town square to the movie. The super duper super streamlined car was standing in front of the theater. It was long and it was red with chromium trimmings, and it had the super duper's monogram on the side. After they had admired the car, they bought 3 tickets and they went inside. There, in the lobby, was the real, honest to goodness super duper. He shook hands with Freddie and Homer, little brother Louis, and he autographed a card for Freddie too. "Mr. Super Duper, would you please do a little flying through space for us? Or maybe just bend a few horseshoes?" asked Freddie. "Oh, I'm sorry, boys, but I haven't time today," said the Super Duper with a big smile. So Homer and Freddie and little Louis found 3 good seats and 8 donuts until the picture began. Now here, ladies and gentlemen, here's the picture of the Super Duper shaking hands with Freddie and little Louis, and Homer, who I must admit is looking fairly impressed. The picture was called "The Super Duper and the Electric Ray." That was big. Oh, these stories, aren't they great? I love them. The picture was called "The Super Duper and the Electric Ray." That was because the villain had a machine that produced an electric ray, and every time he shined it on a skyscraper or an airplane, the skyscraper or the airplane would explode. He turned the ray on the Super Duper too, but of course the Super Duper was so tough that it did not hurt him. Little Louis got so excited, though, that he choked on a donut, and Homer had to take him to the lobby for a drink of water. But finally, the Super Duper broke the villain's headquarters to bits, lifted the ray machine, which must have weighed several tons, and tossed it over a cliff. Then he caught the villain and rescued the pretty girl. But at the very end, the villain slipped away. And then these words appeared on the screen. Next installment, next Saturday afternoon. Why did the Super Duper let the villain get away again? Asked little Louis on the way out. I guess that's because he wants to chase him again next Saturday, said Homer. Outside, they admired the Super Duper's car once more, and then they started home in the wagon. It was evening by the time old Lucy, pulling the wagon with Freddie and little Louis and Homer on it, had reached the curve in the road just before you come to Homer's father's filling station. A car honked from behind, and Freddie pulled old Lucy over to the edge of the road, then swoosh! Around from the rear sped a long red car with chromium trimmings. Here's the picture, ladies and gentlemen. Here's the picture. Look at this. There's Homer and Freddie and little Louis in the box and old Lucy. And then behind them, there's the Super Duper just zipping along. Just zipping along. Oh my goodness. Then swoosh! Around from the rear sped a long red car with chromium trimmings. Gosh, it's the Super Duper, said Freddie. Well, he shouldn't drive so fast around that curve, said Homer, sort of doubtful like. Almost before Homer had finished speaking, there was a loud screech of brakes and then an even louder crash. Giddy up, Lucy, said Freddie. We better hurry up and see what happened. Gee, there weren't any cars coming the other way, said Homer. I wonder what happened. Golly, said Freddie in a quavery voice. Do you suppose it was the electric ray? Whoa, Lucy, we better park here. Oh, shucks, said Homer in his bravest voice. I'm going to go see what happened. Little Louis began to cry, and Homer tried to comfort him. Louis, the electric ray business was just part of a movie. It could not have anything to do with this. Homer tried hard to make it sound convincing. Then Homer and Freddie and little Louis got out of the wagon, and they crept along the curve at the side of the road. There, around the curve, was the Super Duper's car down in a ditch. All three boys stopped crawling along and lay down on their stomachs to watch. Oh boy, whispered Freddie. Now we'll get to see the Super Duper lifted back on the road with one hand. There was a flash of light, and little Louis cried, Is that the electric ray? It's only the headlights of a car, said Homer. Come on, let's go a little closer. They could get a little closer. They could see the Super Duper now, sitting there in the twilight with his head in his hands. I wonder if he got hurt, said Homer. No, whispered Freddie. Nothing can hurt the Super Duper. He's too tough. Well, if he isn't hurt, why doesn't he lift the car back on the road? Asked Homer. Shh, said Freddie. He's an awfully modest fellow. So they waited, and they watched from the bushes. The Super Duper sighed a couple of times, and then he got up and he started walking around his car. Now watch, said Freddie in a loud whisper. Oh boy, oh boy. The Super Duper did not lift the car. No, not yet. He looked at the dent that a fence post had made in his shiny red fender. And then the incredible happened. The colossal, gigantic, antic, Super Duper, the same Super Duper who defied the elements, who was so strong that he broke up battleships like toothpicks, who was so tough that cannonballs bounced off his chest. Yes, who was tougher than steel. He stooped down and he said, "Ouch." There could be no mistake. He said it again, louder. "Ouch." The great Super Duper had gotten himself caught on the barbed wire fence. "Well, for crying out loud," said Freddie. "What happened?" asked little Louis. "Did he get himself raided by the villain?" "Come on, Freddie, let's go untangle him," said Homer. Then Freddie and little Louis and Homer unsnagged the Super Duper, and he sighed again and said, "Oh, thank you, boys. You know if there's a garage near here? It looks as though it'll take a wrecking car to get my car out of the ditch." "Sure, my father has a garage down at the crossing," said Homer. "And we have a horse right up there on the road. We can pull your car out of the ditch." "Well, now, isn't that lucky?" said the Super Duper with a big smile. So they hitched old Lucy to the car, and she pulled and everybody pushed until the car was back on the road. Little Louis sat with the Super Duper in his car, and Homer and Freddie rode on old Lucy's back while she towed the car toward Homer's father's filling station. "What happened, Mr. Super Duper? Did the villain ray you?" asked little Louis. "Oh, no," said the Super Duper, and he laughed. "When I came around that curve, there was a skunk right in the middle of the road. I didn't want to hit him and get this new car all smelled up, so I went into the ditch. Ha ha." When they had reached the filling station, they put some iodine on the scratches the barbed wire had made on the Super Duper, and he made faces just like anybody else when it was daubed on. Then he ate a hamburger, and by that time, Homer's father had the car fixed, except for the dent in the fender. Before the Super Duper drove away, he thanked the boys and made them a present of a large stack of Super Duper comic books. After it had gone, Homer and Freddie went back with old Lucy to get the wagon. "Well, anyway, Freddie, we've got a complete set of Super Duper comic books," said Homer. "Yeah," said Freddie. Then he said, "Say, Homer, do me a favor, will you? Don't tell anybody about the Super Duper and the barbed wire and the ditch and the iodine, especially Artie Bush. If he doesn't hear about this, I might be able to trade my comic books for that baseball bat of his, that Louisville Slugger he's got that's only slightly cracked." "Okay," said Homer. "Come to think of it, his cousin Skinny has a pretty good ball, too. This is a good time to get even for that time that Skinny traded me a bicycle bell that wouldn't ring for my nearly new bugle." All right, ladies and gentlemen. All right, that is the end of the Case of the Cosmic Comic, the Super Duper. Such a great story. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week. We'll be back next week, I believe, with the donuts. Yep, the donuts next week. Classic American story. All right, you take good care. See you then. Bye-bye.